And hello and happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. It is Friday afternoon, 1 p.m. in the Eastern Coast in near Boston, Massachusetts. And here we are. Our producer is somewhat discombobulated, but that's okay.
He's messing us all up.
He's messing us all up, and that's okay. I have my act together today for once. So, happy Friday, guys.
Who am I? I'm Steven the Medium,
That's
your
right.
co-host. And we
Hey.
have this crazy producer here.
Yeah, he's.
If you imagine if he was like an octopus and had like 8 arms.
I don't know.
They-
I
they- like,
I
they'd
wouldn't
be
want to.
doing
No,
so much.
He's all over the place. He celebrated his birthday.
He's the birthday
Wednesday,
boy.
right?
He's the birthday
and,
boy this week.
And this weekend will be his birthday weekend. So happy birthday again!
And look
for for those of you watching the stream live, the live stream, take a look at Steven in his new glasses. They're absolutely fabulous. You look like
Thank
Clark
you.
Kent.
Thank
actually,
you.
So
I'll take
just,
that.
Just saying,
That's
I'll
good.
take it too.
Yeah.
After all, I am married to you. So.
That's right.
So how are you guys doing? This is gonna be the best day of my life. I feel it.
I love that.
How about you guys? How you do? Mark is looking like, are you talking to me? Mark, you're in front of me and I'm actually looking at you. How are you doing? You're never this quiet.
I know, exactly.
Well, yeah, I was talking off the air about the fact that I had an eye appointment, and they dilated my eyes and did some tests. And today, my vision's still a little
So he can't see us,
hairy,
Steven.
but not bad. I mean, I can see enough to, do things, and I'm here.
Okay.
So, but it's been a kind of weird last couple of days.
Is that why when we got here you asked me who's the woman with me?
Okay. I'll get back to you on that one. But just saying,
Yeah, it's been a little nuts
Well-
with me, so
well, hopefully today, not hopefully actually, scratch that.
Ooh.
Today's show is the kind of show that you want to tune in because I'm going to give you the key to beating procrastination forever. How many of you are procrastinators? Raise your hand. Me included, by the way. I procrastinate all the time, but I've practiced this element. And it's actually a much bigger conversation. I'm using procrastination because that's one thing that most of us can relate to one way or another. We procrastinate, some of us more than others. But listening to today's show is going to give you access to a much, much bigger conversation. So if you're a procrastinator, today is the day that you want to listen. And if you want to call 508-222-1320, it's an opportunity to get on the air and talk to me about what is it that you're procrastinating so that I can tell you how to stop that behavior once and for all. So,
And it's different for every person, right? Every procrastinator, there's reasons behind why we do that, right?
absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. How many of you have those to-do lists that you've been avoiding, right? And you've been avoiding them for a long time. And then, after a day, after 2 days, 3 days, for some of us, weeks, sometimes even months, those lingering to-dos become those monkeys in the back. You know that experience, that yucky experience? Mm-hmm. That's what it feels like. And, by the way, some things may be big things that we're putting on hold. And the bigger they are, the bigger the monkey, the biggest that feeling of yuckiness that we feel. But regardless, this is an opportunity to discover how to let go of those monkeys so that you can have a sense of being freed up.
Now, let me ask you something, because when you were just talking and I was thinking that I procrastinate like most of us do, right? Mm-hmm. But I will tell you, Elix, that there's definitely times that I procrastinate with things I know are good. For instance, like if I know whatever I just did, and I'm getting feedback from it, and I maybe even feel or know that the feedback's going to be very good, sometimes I even procrastinate on even looking at that. So it's not even a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's just, it's crazy, isn't it?
It's absolutely crazy. And that's actually a great point, because procrastinating, it doesn't have to be procrastinating always about the things that are necessarily bad. There are things that may be good for you. So for example, if you need to go to a doctor to get, your health checked, that's not a bad thing, right? But a lot of us resist the idea of going to the doctor because we have some conversations in the background that give power to that conversation. But I want to give you, a very simple example. I use this, by the way, this conversation is a conversation that it's perhaps the one conversation that I spend the most time with my clients, because it's an ongoing, this is not an absolute, it's not a linear process. This is an ongoing fluid process. Conversation, this conversation comes in and out, because again, it's part of a bigger conversation, and I want to get into that, after the first break. But I'll give you an example. Paying bills, right? How many of us avoid paying that one bill that we know we need to pay? And you keep pretending that somehow, you've forgotten or you don't have to pay it, but you have to pay it, right? And you have it in the background. And that thing, every day that it passes, that monkey gets heavier and heavier. And you just pretend, we try our best to pretend that we don't have to pay it. But we know we do. It's like we got those reminders. And then what happens the moment you pay that bill?
You feel so much better.
You feel like 1,000 pounds were lifted off your shoulders, right? That is the power of this conversation. Imagine what would be possible if you got access to choosing to remove that heavy weight off your shoulders in real time.
Well, I don't know if this is procrastination or just laziness, and it may be a TMI type of thing.
By the way, Mark, I'm actually glad you make that point, because laziness can be a function of procrastinating.
Mine is cleaning my apartment.
Yeah.
Okay. I know I have to do it, but I don't have people over a lot. I don't have visitors. It's just me. And I sit there and the rug needs to be vacuumed, and and I'm looking at it and I don't feel like doing it. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And after I do it, I sit there and I look at my apartment. It's all nice and clean, and I say to myself, "Wow, this looks cool."
And you feel like $1,000,000.
Right. And maybe this is a single guy thing more than, because I don't have anybody beating me on the head saying, hey, clean this dump up. But
again, that's a function of why procrastinating persists, because often we don't have other people who are reminding us, hey, you got to get this done. This tool, this skill is your own skill that you self-develop to remind yourself, hey, I got to get this done. And that's why this is so powerful.
Just out of clarity, just to clarify, I'm not an Oscar Madison. Okay. You won't find a sandwich under my couch.
There's going to be
viewers
like,
that's good. That's good to know. That is very, very good to know. but
You know who Oscar Madison is, right?
I have no idea.
Odd Couple.
From The Odd Couple.
Oh yeah, I'm too young for that, so I have no
He
idea.
was
Well,
the
and if
slob
I'm even younger, how do I even know that? I don't know.
Okay, can we move on? This conversation is not about how old or how young
Or Oscar
are
Madison.
we, or Oscar Madison. I had no idea who that is. But anyway, but again, procrastination is one of many things that we're going to talk about here today. I'm bringing that up because it is that one thing that most people in this world, if not everyone, can relate to at some point or another. But I want you guys to start thinking, just to get prepared for the next segment, I want you guys to start thinking about, if you have a note in front of you, make a list. Where are you procrastinating? What are some of the areas where you find yourself not doing the things that you know you need to do, so that you can then bring more clarity to this conversation when we come back from the break? So again, make a list of the things that you're procrastinating on, so that we can then engage in the how-to and procrastination once and for all. Does that sound good?
Uh-huh.
So, Mr. Mark, are we ready for a break? And I'm doing that purposely so that we can have a longer segment next week. If not, that's fine.
If you would like to take a break right now, your wish is my
He's a
command.
genie.
Oh my God!
He's a genie.
Can we get that in writing, Jim? If you're listening to the show, please get that in writing. I want a contract around that. My wish is your command. 508-222-1320. If you're procrastinating and you want to have a conversation about how to end procrastination once and for all, you want to call. You do not want to miss the show. We'll see you when we come back. And hello and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your host, Coach Elix, and we are coming to you live from the WARA studio in Attleboro, Massachusetts, with me, my wonderful co-host and husband, Stephen the Medium.
Hello.
And our producer, Mr. Mark. Happy birthday, the birthday boy. So we're talking about how to end procrastination once and for all. So let me begin by asking this question. What comes to mind to you, listeners, and to both of you here, when you hear the word integrity? What comes to mind when you hear the word integrity?
Well, for me, it's the first thing I think of is just a stand-up, honest, genuine, authentic person.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. How about for you, Mark?
Yeah, somebody that if they tell me something, I don't question whether to believe it or not,
Oh, I love
because their reputation has always been that they're honest and forthright. And
That's absolutely fabulous, and that is going to be very keep those definitions in mind, or however it is that you define integrity for yourself, because I'm going to connect that dot in a couple of minutes. But for a lot of people, when they hear integrity, they immediately think about morality. And in this context, I want to make sure that you understand, all of you listening, that this is not about morality in any way at all. In fact, the integrity is the I in GRIP. In my own methodology, Get a Grip. But in this context, integrity is about foundational integrity. So think about it this way. And I use the metaphor, the house, as a metaphor for life. Our life, like a house, has different parts. It has, we have a roof, we have sides to the house, and as with anything else, what's the most important part of any house?
The foundation.
The foundation, right? So if our foundation is compromised, the house is not going to withstand. So if you think about life, the house is a metaphor for life. If your foundational integrity is compromised, you're very likely not going to get the extraordinary results that you want. Now, you may have a good life. By the way, some buildings are built on foundations that are faulty, and they can still build the building. They still withstand, and some of them may even look good, but they cannot withstand with time, because eventually that corrupted foundation or that gap in the foundation is going to compromise the building in and of itself. And that's, again, I think of life, I think of, integrity as that metaphor for life. Now, why I bring integrity to this conversation is because there are plenty of reasons, plenty of examples that cause gaps in our foundational integrity. And procrastination is probably the number one example of what can cause an integrity gap in your foundation. So for those of you who have never thought of procrastinating as a gap in your foundational integrity, I want you to start thinking about it that way, and go to how Mark defined integrity. So if you are somebody that is committed to living a life in a certain way, and your foundational integrity is compromised, that is going to be an enormous break in how, and the results that you get in your life. Another example of gaps that impact your foundational integrity is unfulfilled promises, by the way. Avoiding difficult conversations. Those are three of the major things that can cause gaps in our foundational integrity. So I believe we do have calls. So let's just take one of the calls and let's see what they have to say. Hello, this is Coach Elix. Who's this?
Hello, this is Miss K. How are you, Coach Elix?
Miss
K
K,
is
we
in the
love
house.
Miss K. By the way, for those of you who listened to our show a few weeks ago, after we lost our little dog, Miss K was so gracious to send a little bouquet of flowers, and Stephen nor I had any idea who Miss K was until he revealed herself a few weeks later. And then we got to find out who Miss K is. But Miss K also happens to be a wonderful ex-student of mine and somebody that I know has a whole lot of knowledge about foundational integrity and and how procrastination can impact our foundational intelligence. So,
And she's so interesting, by the way.
she's super.
Yes.
She's incredible.
Yes.
So what are you hearing, Miss Kay, when you hear about foundational integrity and procrastinating?
I definitely know that there's a connection, at least for myself. I can't speak for everyone else. And I think for me, one of the first things that comes to mind when you talk about integrity and how do you define that or what is it, the next thing I think of is work. Because, for myself, I know that when, like you just said, when my foundational integrity is compromised, there's a ripple effect in other areas of my life. So it affects my diet, my work habits, my budget, my personal finance management, my chores around the house. Like, it definitely bleeds into other areas. And I know when the foundational integrity is there, at least, the basics of what I want to be my benchmark for, everything else just falls into place too. And it's so interesting how procrastination is no longer even a conversation when that's there, but it's so affected by, just waiting and waiting and waiting. And it's like, we don't necessarily have all the time in the world to wait. Like, what are we afraid of? Why aren't we just doing the work?
Absolutely. And you make a great point. When integrity is compromised, the dominoes begin to fall. And it's a chain reaction. And it may start with one little thing, but it keeps growing and growing and growing. And you may lose attention to detail. You have a lack of discipline. You lose credibility, which is a big deal, depending on, the kind of person that you assert you are, and you can be perceived as somebody who's not trustworthy or reliable. And those are not good qualities for anyone to carry it on. And your point also, Ms. Kay, it's just as important because there are different areas where foundational integrity can be impacted. So you have work, you have your home life, you have relationships, you have your own motivation and drive, finances, health, and wellness. So for those of you listening, I want you to start thinking about where in any of these areas specifically, where is your foundational integrity compromised? And I'm gonna come up in a few minutes with a few questions that you can ask yourself. But foundational integrity, what I want to make sure you guys get is that it can corrode over time. So it is something that you want to pay very close attention to. And when my clients come to me and they say, hey, I'm having a loss of power, that's the first place that I go to. Where is your foundational integrity compromised?
And Ms. K, let me ask you, with this conversation about procrastination, how do you handle that, or like what's the the process or the method you use for yourself to not procrastinate or to shorten its life, or what have you done? Like, what works for you?
That's a great question. It's different for me now than it was for sure when I was Elix's student back in the day.
Miss K, you're making me look old, and I'm just barely in my 30s, just saying.
Maybe that's your filter. Back in the day could have been a couple years ago. I didn't say duration.
Okay, thank you.
I said she was interesting.
I know. Thank you.
Well, when Elix and I first started having a conversation about procrastination, what really resonated with me was how I viewed the task at hand, and it's so different now. So I catch myself viewing the task at hand is, what am I afraid of? If I'm procrastinating, if I'm putting something off, there's usually a reason for it. It's not because I'm lazy, or it's not because it's not something I don't want, obviously, right? Whenever there's a task that needs to be done and it's not done and I wait to do it, I'm losing out on the benefit of having that task completed. Whether that benefit is just something as simple as, okay, that's marked off my to-do list, or whether it's something a little more but still simple as, oh, now I have these beautiful lights strung up in my backyard for some wonderful ambiance, outdoor lighting in the evenings with a fireplace. Like, it can, which I bring that up because it literally took 10 minutes, but it took me over 2 years to just do it.
Wow. Wow.
And I asked listeners.
It was just like, yeah, I was just like, oh, well, I have to figure out how to hang them. And then when it finally came around to, okay, pull the lights out of the box
Yes.
and let's see how to hang them. It was literally 10 minutes. So it's our joke now in the house of, what do we need to do? Was that going to be like hanging the lights? Or, like, it's a joke now because now we just get it done. It's like, okay, it'll be like hanging the lights. It'll take 10 minutes. It seems overwhelming. It might take all afternoon, but the reality is it will take no time at all.
I love it.
And by the way, you make a great point, Miss Kay, because sometimes we spend more time procrastinating than actually, doing what needs to get done. What needs to get done often takes no time whatsoever, but we spend days, months, years suffering. And I always said, I don't know if you remember this, suffering is optional. You can suffer if you want to. Go ahead, knock yourself out. Let me know how that works out for you. I don't recommend it. I don't recommend it, but if you want to go ahead and suffer, go ahead, keep procrastinating. So a few things that, by the way, the bigger your game, the bigger the integrity gap this is going to be for you. So if you're somebody who's up to, and I know Miss Kay is a force to be reckoned with. She's playing an enormous game. She's an executive producer in Hollywood. So she's somebody who's who's playing a big game. But for all of you, you got to really think about what it is that you're ultimately committed to, because that is aligning that commitment to your action is how you bridge that gap, that integrity gap, that foundational integrity. So I think Mr. Mark, you gave me a sign. I couldn't see what the sign says. Also, so he's giving me the evil eye, the one good eye that he's got. He's kind of like giving me the evil eye. So I think we got to go into a break. We'll be right back. Miss Kay, stay there, and we'll come back after the break. And welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your host, Coach Elix, and with us I have Miss K. Miss K, I wanted to bring you in today because I wanted to give everyone a sense of who you were, who you are, because you are going to be joining us as a guest in a couple of weeks, correct?
Yes, I'm very excited.
So we are going to be talking about how to play a big game because Miss K is somebody who's playing a big game in life, and we'll tie all of these integrity conversation and how to pivot, making the play that you want. So
And you gotta be here for that show because I don't know Miss K like Elix does, but I know some we've been interacting, and you do not want to honestly miss the show with her. You just don't.
you do not. So thank you for joining us, and we'll be talking to you. People, be on the lookout because we're gonna have an awesome
Yes.
social media promo
Yes.
about having Miss K on the show. So we'll be talking very soon. Thank you for being with
We
us.
love
okay?
you, Miss K.
Love you.
Yay! Bye.
I love that woman.
Hello, who's this? Hello, who's this?
Hello.
Hi, who is this?
Hello, Coach Elix. This is Brianna.
Brianna. Well, welcome to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. So talk to me,
So
Brianna.
glad you're having me.
I'm love having you, and I know I watched your comment on the Facebook Live, and you talked about being a master procrastinator. So what have you heard so far that have given you an opening to change the behavior of procrastinating?
I think it's just the mindset of that everybody says you're lazy if you procrastinate, and that sometimes it's just you procrastinate the good things and the bad things. I didn't even think about all the things that are good that we sometimes procrastinate.
Yeah, and you know what, Brianna, your point is really awesome because this conversation, it's not about what anyone thinks of you. This conversation is not about what they say you are or you're not. So I'm going to invite you that whenever you hear somebody says you're lazy, that you sort of like don't even give power to that conversation. What I want you to do instead is I want you to ask yourself, what is Brianna committed to? Who is Brianna committed to being? So when you think about who you are, when you think about your aspirations and your goals, what comes to mind? What is the vision that you have for yourself? By the way, this is a conversation I had with Steven not long ago. What is the vision that you have for yourself?
So the biggest thing that I procrastinate on is schoolwork, and it's really just I'm in it for the long haul, and I think both of you kind of understand, especially even because I am getting a PhD, and it is a long time to be in school.
Yes.
And so it's not that the work is hard; it's simply that you get to a point where you're sick of going through the motions. It gets tedious, and so I know I have this goal. I desperately want to be a forensic psychologist, and I don't question that love, but it's a long journey to try to stay motivated the whole time.
I get it. And by the way, it's not an easy journey. But think about this, Brianna. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. Everyone would be having PhDs. We'd be calling everyone Dr. So-and-so and Dr. So-and-so. So it's not easy. It's a challenging journey. But it's designed to be challenging because only the people who are truly committed to stepping into that gap are the ones that step into that gap. Let me ask you this question, Brianna. Why? Why is that important for you?
It's the idea of being able to help and make a difference in this world in a large way, and it's also that I'm obsessed with psychology. Even when I'm in my off time, that's all I can think about. It's and I know that it's the right path for me.
Yeah. So what I heard is Brianna is somebody who's committed to being somebody who makes a difference in this world. And you're going to do it through that pathway. So that is a pretty tall order, by the way. So if you think about that metaphor that I used earlier, integrity as a metaphor for life, think about it. That's your house, your commitment to being somebody who makes a difference for others. So if your foundation, Brianna, is compromised, and by the way, I want you to think, be very self-aware that compromise means that every time you put off doing something that you need to do that will help you fulfill on that commitment, you're compromising your foundational integrity. So in other words, what you're doing is you're weakening the foundation of your house, the foundation of that, that life that you're committed to. Does that make sense?
Oh, definitely.
So one way that, and again, I tell all my clients this all the time. That's one of the simplest way to always make the correction in real time. Align what you're committed to, align your actions with what it is that you're committed to. And there's 5 questions, by the way, Brianna, 5 questions. And this is for Brianna and this is for anyone else. 5 questions that you can ask yourself to identify gaps in your foundational integrity. Question number 1, what have I been procrastinating on? And by the way, Brianna, that's one of other things. So you may want to make a list of other things that you're procrastinating on. What promises have I made that I have not yet to honor? And sometimes that question, by the way, leads to other gaps that may be hidden from your view. And again, if you're somebody who's committed to making a difference, you got to start with yourself first and foremost. You got to make that difference with you first and foremost. What conversations do I need to have with myself and others? If there are conversations that are in the background for you that are not complete, that creates a huge gap in your integrity, in your foundational integrity. Do I have any health issues that need to be addressed? And what other things do I need to accomplish that I have been avoiding that will lead me to fulfilling on that commitment? And in your case, the commitment to being somebody who makes a difference for others. What are you hearing here, Brianna?
I definitely profound. Thank you. I feel like I tend to procrastinate on the things that I put them off because it's hard to deal with it. Like another thing that I procrastinate on is going through my mother's things who passed away last year. Mm. And so I think it's just the long haul difficult things. It's easier to do the little goals than it is to do the big ones.
And the big ones, however, will also have a much bigger impact in that foundational integrity. And that's what you want to remember. And a question that I would ask you is, by the way, Stephen and I practice this with each other is, again, think of what you spoke as your commitment. You're committed to being somebody who makes a difference for others. So at some point in your career, you're going to have somebody that's going to come to you that's going to be dealing exactly with the same thing you had dealt with. What would you be telling them? So if you're not somebody who step into being what you are committed that others be, that would be a huge gap in your foundational integrity, because that is an unalignment that leads others to see you as not authentic, not genuine, not trustworthy. And that is not somebody who says, I'm committed to being for others or to making a difference. Does that make sense?
Oh, I agree. That makes total sense.
When Brianna was just explaining or answering, I forget the question you asked, and Brianna was just talking about her commitment. I think you asked, why
her vision. What's her vision?
Right?
Yeah.
honestly, when you were answering that question, Brianna, you just, it was like you represented what I started in the show about when Elix asked me what integrity was. And I said, a stand-up person, someone who's very genuine, someone who's very authentic. When you spoke and answered the way you answered, integrity was just completely surrounding you. It was really amazing, Brianna.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah, when he had asked, what does that integrity mean, and said take morals out of it, the first thing I thought of was not being true to my own goals.
Wow.
And again, Brianna, that is the first step into restoring integrity. So I've been given the sign that I have to go into a break. Brianna, thank you so much for your
Brianna.
call, for your generosity. I know your call made a huge difference to all of those who are listening to are completely relating to, procrastinating and having other integrity gaps in their foundation. Thank you so much, Brianna.
Love it. Bye, Brianna.
And if you want to call 508-222-1320, we are going to take a break. And when we come back, I'm going to tell you how to avoid the gaps in integrity moving forward. And hello and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. This is your host, Coach Elix, and today we're talking about the key to stopping procrastinating forever. And we are talking about foundational integrity, what foundational integrity is, and how it can impact everything that you do. It can actually impact getting extraordinary results for your life in any area, whether it's business or whether it's work. So that was an awesome call from Brianna, and an awesome call from Miss Kay, and I can't wait to have more conversation with Miss Kay. But so the question is, how do we restore integrity, foundational integrity? Again, a reminder, if you just tune in, we're not talking about morality. This is not about judgment, evaluation, about your morals. I have no interest in having that conversation with anyone because I'm not a priest or in any kind of religion whatsoever. But this is about foundational integrity. This is about making sure that, again, using the house as a metaphor for life, that your foundation for your house, the house that you're building for your life, is whole and complete. So how to restore integrity, foundational integrity in real life? How do you think you can restore foundational integrity in real life? So one way that you can restore foundational integrity in real life is very simple. In fact, I call this the way. The only way that you can restore it is to follow through on every commitment that you make. So when you commit to something, you follow through on it. Period. No other reason. Now, can you break a commitment and still have full integrity? Restore that foundational integrity? The answer is yes. And, people say, well, how? How can I do that? Well, it's very simple. You have to acknowledge, first and foremost, that you've broken your word, that you've broken that promise. How many of you, I'll give you one example. You made a commitment to go to lunch with someone. And then you say, I'm sorry, I can't do it. And the person says, okay. And then you make another time, and then the next time you break that commitment again. And the person says, okay. At some point, that other person is not going to really find you reliable at all. So that's a break in foundational integrity, not honoring that commitment. But if you want to restore integrity, even when you break your word, what you have to do is you have to acknowledge that you've broken your word. So it's acknowledging, it's having that conversation with that person and saying, as an example, saying, hey, I'm sorry that I've committed to doing that X and I've broken that commitment. That is the only way that you can restore foundational integrity, even when you break your word in the matter.
Now, Elix, does that also mean you've got to acknowledge it to yourself?
First and foremost, you got to acknowledge it to yourself. Thank you for asking. Yes, first and foremost, you have to acknowledge it with yourself. And then you have to take that difficult step of acknowledging with the person that you actually broke that promise to. By the way, think of how many times have you experienced somebody saying to you, I'll call you, and they never call you.
Or me doing it, me saying I'm going to call you and I don't do it.
Yes, that is an act that corrodes our foundational integrity. And if you keep doing so, if you say to someone, I'll call you and I never call you, if you say to someone, I'll be there and then you don't show up or you cancel at the last minute. If you in business, by the way, if you're somebody leading a team and you have a meeting and you say, we start at 9:00 and it's 9:15 and you haven't started, that's a way to corrode your foundational integrity. If you have emails that you haven't responded to and somebody on the other side is expecting a response, that's a way to corrode your foundational integrity. Phone calls the same way. Again, any promise that you've made, that you haven't followed through is a way to corrode your foundational integrity.
Well, you know something, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but some of us learn to be polite. That's what you do. You say, I'll call you. And it's a polite way to end the conversation, but you're not really committing to it. If you get what I
get what you're saying, and that's a great point. And what I say, for those of you who are connecting with what Mark said, is I would ask the same question that I asked Brianna. What are you committed to? Are you committed to being polite, or have you committed to something bigger? I don't really care. I'm not here to tell you you have to have a certain commitment in life. If you're somebody who's just committed to going along and just living life, in a status quo way, fine. A good life is a good life. The people that come to me are people who are committed to living extraordinary lives. These are people who are unwilling to just live life in a status quo way. So if you're somebody like that, I say that's unacceptable.
Now, one other thing, and I don't want it to sound like an excuse, maybe it is. I don't work. I'm retired. So I have nothing scheduled during my days at all, except Wednesday and Friday when I'm here. Everything else is, it comes up as it comes up. But can that, to me, maybe that's part of my problem procrastinating? Like Brianna's talking about, she was talking about, was it being a psychologist?
Well, she's going into a PhD program, yes.
Right. So she has something concrete there that she's working toward, where like my days are just, gee, what do I feel like doing today? Maybe I'll take a nap.
But what you're talking about, Mark, is the doing. This is nothing to do with the doing. Whatever you got to do during the day has nothing to do with what it is that you're committed to having your life be. So maybe this is a good conversation. It should be a thought-provoking conversation for you or anyone who's listening, who's connecting with what Mark is saying, to ask yourself, what is it? If I had an opportunity to live an extraordinary life, what is it that I'm committed to? Nothing to do. The doing is doing. Who you're being is what this conversation, what would give you access to, to foundational integrity that's whole and complete. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
So bottom line is, listen, only commit to those things that you're actually willing to accomplish, period. If you find yourself committing to things that you're not willing to accomplish, stop doing it. Stop doing it. Stephen can tell you there's times where we've committed to something and he's like, oh my God, I really don't feel like doing that. And what do I say to you?
Don't.
No, that's not what I say. I actually say, no, Stephen, we committed to something.
You always bring up that.
Yeah,
and
we
say
made a
that
commitment.
If you've committed to it, then you should follow through with it.
And that's the one and only rule. Stop, commit to following through on everything that you are saying, agreeing to do, and only commit to those things that you're actually willing to accomplish. It's that simple, people. It's that simple. So, any questions? Is this clear for you guys as well?
Yes, it's clear to me.
So the next time, this is, you want to begin to practice foundational integrity. The next time you're asked to commit to something by being willing to, like Mark said, this is a point. If you're not willing to commit, you can politely say no. And by the way, that's where the integrity is. It's better to say, no, I cannot commit to that. No, I do not want to do that. In a polite way, by the way. We're not here. This is not about hurting people. This is not about being nasty.
That's such an excellent point.
Yes.
Really it is. That really hit home with me.
Yeah, listen, let me tell you something. There is extraordinary power in learning to say no. Extraordinary leaders know how to say no. Ordinary people love to say yes all the time. But being a yes person, unwilling to fulfill and follow through, makes you somebody who's not reliable, makes you somebody who's not trustworthy, makes you somebody who is not genuine or authentic. And I ask yourself, if you're okay coming across as that, then knock yourself out. Like I said earlier, suffering is optional. Want to suffer? Go ahead. Knock yourself out. Let me know. At some point, you can call me back and let me know how that's working out for you.
Well, you know something also, when Mark was asking the question about him being retired, he has Brianna, who is her goal, and she will get to being a forensic psychologist, but yet she even talked about procrastinating.
Yes.
So whether you've got something, whether you don't have something, right? It creeps in.
It creeps in, and it doesn't matter. Listen, I work with some pretty high-performing executives, CEOs, doctors, and it's amazing to me how often we get into the conversation of foundational integrity and how often I have to call them out. Listen, if you're somebody who's committed to being your best self, you cannot dishonor that word by breaking your word and just saying yes to everything and then not fulfilling, not following through. That's inauthentic. That's not genuine. That is not what true leadership is about. And again, I hope this conversation today was thought-provoking for you. This conversation is a conversation that you can take away and, do your homework. Make a list. Start with making a list of the things that you need to get done, that are those monkeys in the bag, and just start one thing at a time. I promise you, it's like money back guarantee. If you begin to take action and you don't feel like $1,000,000, you don't feel the power being restored to you immediately, you call me back and we'll have a conversation about that. But I guarantee you that you'll be calling me to tell me how much your life and your results have transformed by simply the function of restoring integrity. So I think we are at that time where I got to close. By the way, if you want to be a guest on my show, you want to go to coachelix.com/guest. Fill out the form. Tell me what it is that you want to talk about. This is an open forum, and I love to have people who are willing to come in and be guests. And you can find me at Coach Elix. Everything. Where can they find you?
But is it just me? What every time you talked about monkeys on your back, don't you start thinking about Wizard of Oz and when the witch lets all the monkeys out? They're all behind and they're running and they're flying after you.
That's why my chapter in the book, Changing Conversations for a Changing World, is based on the Wizard of Oz.
See that? But people can find me, Stephen the Medium, everywhere.
And Mr. Mark, they can find you on Wednesdays at 3, and the show Jukebox. I don't know. Just tell me what it is.
Mark's Jukebox.
Mark's 1320 Jukebox.
There you go. So here we are. We look forward to having you next week. For me, we'll be here. No, 2 weeks. I'm sorry.
We're not here next
week. We're moving. 2 weeks we'll be here with Steven on Wednesdays with Through the Static at 5, and the following Friday at 1 o'clock, Get a Grip. Have a wonderful weekend, and live today as if it is the best day of your life. Bye, everyone.